This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
I'm Keeling in Innsbruck, where the Austrian Space Forum is conducting experiments for future Mars missions.
And I'm Henderson in Copenhagen, Denmark, where artificial intelligence is being used to catch the early signs of the deadliest form of skin cancer.
There are literally hundreds of organizations worldwide who are working on future Mars expeditions, everybody with their own specific focus and niche. In our case, it's the surface operation and the search for life.
We're not training astronauts, but we're figuring out how they should be trained. We're trying to write the field manual. And nothing can stop an idea whose time is coming. This idea is coming.
It's not a matter of if, but when. Mars enthusiasts are certain humans will explore and eventually settle on the red planet. In the past, space missions have been led by governments, but now we're seeing more entrepreneurs and small companies joining in. I'm Keeling in Innsbruck, Austria, where a group is preparing their astronauts for a very different kind of Mars mission.
Human beings have not yet landed on Mars, but when they do, they'll be using data from research simulations carried out on Earth.
What is the Austrian Space Forum? What is its purpose?
We are a research entity, which means our product, if you say so, is knowledge. It's the papers, it's the journal articles and the conference contributions. Basically, we are learning how to ask the right questions. When one day people will go to Mars, they know how to do it in the most efficient and safe way possible.
NASA is also watching you.
Yes, we have also professional observers programs where we invite and we have people from major space agencies from Germany, from France, from European Space Agency and NASA, so to join us and see what we're doing, because we don't want to do blue sky research without any connection to the major agencies. So we might not have the means for the big budget projects, but we are fast. And at this stage of Mars exploration developments, it's important to be able to fail fast, fail cheap, to have a steep learning curve, and that's what we do. We are able to do things major big agencies are having a hard time doing because of the process that they have, but we can try out the wild and the crazy ideas, and that's how we learn.
Dr. Robert Wild is one of the forum's newly trained so-called analog astronauts, which means he conducts ground-based real-time simulations of Mars conditions instead of using computer modelling.
Oh, you're arriving in style. I had to walk. How are you this morning?
Great, nice to meet you.
Hello. Big day ahead.
Absolutely.
Well, it is for me anyway. I guess you're used to this.
Robert is hoping to be selected for a one-month mission to the Negev Desert in Israel next year. It will come down to whether his expertise is needed.
Thank you.
Contact Hawaii, contact 100% keen and modulation is go. Roger, Hawaii, you last clear.
I play a small role. I'd like to think it can be an important one. The drive to get to Mars it involves a lot of people and involve a lot of work from engineers, from scientists, and from people like us, and everybody working together, everyone doing their own small part will eventually make this happen. And so I'm happy that I can be part of that.
Mars is the second smallest planet in the solar system after Mercury and lies 227.9 million kilometres from Earth on average. It changes because the two planets orbit the Sun at different speeds. This also affects the total time it takes to get there, which is between 150 and 300 days, depending on the speed of the launch. And for the same reason, communication has a delay of up to 22 minutes, which is far quicker than the time it takes to put on the spacesuit.
So this is 3 hours.
Yeah, with a really fast and trained team, it can be a little bit faster, but that's about the time it takes.
Slowing, well, obviously a camera crew is going to slow you down today. So patience, that's a big part of being an astronaut, is it?
Well, it's a big part of everything, I think. Also a scientist, yeah.
The team meticulously work through a checklist.
Why have you got the supports here? Is that, you know, you're going over rocky terrain, that's to keep your legs...
No, actually. So when you're in a real spacesuit, in an area of low pressure on the outside, right, you have air pressure on the inside so you can breathe. And that makes the suit act a little bit like a balloon, right? It balloons out. And that means that whenever you move, you're working against that air pressure. You're pulling against this balloon. And so it restricts your movement, and that's what we have here in order to simulate that restriction. This is actually pulling my legs straight, just like it would be in a real spacesuit.
Right. So you wouldn't have, if you were up in space, you wouldn't have
That's
this.
correct. This is to make it more like wearing a real spacesuit.
And what is this material? Would this be the kind of material that an actual suit would be made out of, or this is just for Earth?
This is just for this suit. However, it is a mix of, correct me if I'm wrong, it's Kevlar and Panox with a reflective and conductive coating on the outside. The reflective coating helps keep the heat load down because if we're going to Mars-like environments on Earth that tends to be deserts, and so if you have a lot of sun, you don't want to heat up too quickly.
You'll be cooking in there.
Yeah, exactly. So this definitely helps with that.
On Mars, a spacesuit would need to protect the astronaut from an average temperature of -60 degrees Celsius. The atmosphere is mostly carbon dioxide with some water vapour. Gravity is only 38% that of Earth, so a 50 kilogram suit would only weigh 19 kilograms on Mars. The surface is covered by a deep layer of fine-grained iron oxide dust, which is likely damaging to the human respiratory system and might wear through spacesuit seals. The Austrian Space Forum has conducted 12 missions to deserts around the world, and founder Dr. Gernot Gromer has been on all of them.
First of all, you have to understand a spacesuit simulator is like a spacecraft to wear for a human. It's a wearable computing device as well. So I would say like 50% of the project is mostly IT related. Now, that's what we see here. If you take a closer look here, for instance, we have sensors like you see O2, CO2 sensor, for instance. We have things to for communication, like the primary communication system, the backup communication system, because everything important like ventilation, like drinking in the spacesuit, or things like talking inside the spacesuit is so important and vital as oxygen to us that we need redundancy inside.
But I guess that's the big part of what you guys are doing. It's practicing all those workflows and protocols so that if something does go wrong, it's going to be okay.
Absolutely. The important thing is we love things to go wrong, but only here on Earth.
How do you react when you're in isolation?
I actually feel quite comfortable in isolation.
Do you have a tendency to panic?
Not that I know of.
Confined spaces don't trouble you?
I'm actually quite comfortable in confined spaces.
On the agenda with me, Stephen Cole, we look up into space. We look down into data. We look at debt. We look at politics. We look at opioids, climate change. We look at all the issues that really matter around the world. But you matter too. We want to tell the stories you want to see and hear about. Make it your agenda.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Skin cancer is on the rise. Catch it early enough, and this is how you treat it. A relatively simple procedure under local anaesthetic. Leave it too long, and things can get more complicated.
By far the most dangerous form of skin cancer is called melanoma. It spreads to other organs fast, and that makes early detection all the more important. I'm Guy Henderson in Copenhagen, Denmark, where artificial intelligence is being used to help do just that.
It is the depths of winter here, so there's little chance of overexposure to the sun, which is thought to be the prime cause of melanoma. Still, you can't be too careful when it comes to cancer.
Guy! Hello. Thank you very much for having us.
A trip to doctors like plastic surgeon Inanna Weiss for a good old-fashioned checkup remains the only way to confirm or allay a patient's concerns.
What are you looking out for?
So I'm looking at the structure, at the amount of pigment, and if it's regular or irregular. There are certain alarm signals that you look for. I will show you a slide. I actually have a pretty good diagram I can show you that depicts it in a more understandable fashion. So this also, to me, does not look dangerous.
Okay.
And while I'm at it, I'm looking at the one you have on your earlobe here as well. On your ear.
So I'm getting a free checkup now?
You are, actually. So everything looks perfectly fine.
Okay, well that's a relief.
But you asked me a question of what you have to look at for.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
if you come over here, I actually have a chart which is generally accessible. And this is what's called the ABCDE of detecting melanoma. So the first row shows normal nevuses, normal birthmarks, normal spots on your body. And you see they're symmetrical, the border is well defined, the color is homogeneous, the diameter is rather small, and they're not changing. If you look at the melanoma slides below, you see that this one is asymmetrical, as the borders are uneven. It has multiple colors. So remember I said earlier that the pigmentation was homogeneous, that it was even?
Yes.
That's a good thing.
Yes.
If it's uneven, that's one of the things you want to look out for.
And now there's a high-tech gadget that can help you keep tabs on them. It's called a mobile phone.
So now we have a series of images of his back, as you can see here. And now
This is the office of Miiskin, a Danish startup whose app can help catch the early signs of the disease. John Friis is the CEO.
basically this is an app. It's a patient consumer technology that helps people identify new things on their skin or changes on their skin. This is one of the feature set is really focused on a close-up image, where you can take several images over time to kind of identify if this mole is changing or developing in any way. And then we have elements where you have a more holistic view of this, and where you take photos of your skin areas, of your body parts, and with some of our technology you can get some support of identifying if new things is coming. 70 to 80% of melanoma skin cancer, which is the most dangerous form, is actually forming as a new mark on your skin and not from an existing mole. That is kind of new science.
With each new user, the app becomes a more powerful tool.
basically, we're using these images to train machine learning algorithms so they are able to identify these elements you have on your skin.
And you say training. Does that mean that they are still in a process of training at this stage?
This is an ongoing process, because the more data we get, we can train our algorithms, the better it will be to identify different elements you have on your skin.
Unlike many other apps, it does not claim to diagnose.
Doctors are saving the life because they identify, they assess the moles, they assess skin cancer, diagnose skin cancer, treat skin cancer. But it's extremely important for the patient to come in and see the doctor in time, because there's a very strong correlation with early detection of a change and then early detection of skin cancer and the successful rate of treatment.
The Miiskin app is the first of its kind that's received some backing from regulators, so Dr. Weiss is now recommending it to patients.
So how many of your patients do you recommend this app to?
I recommend it to patients who come for a full body checkup who have multiple nevi, who have what is called dysplastic nevi syndrome, or who just have lots of spots that are really difficult to evaluate also as a physician.
Health experts see the Miiskin app as one of the early steps towards a transformation of the health sector. Mark Wolf specialises in the application of advanced and predictive analytics.
We went to see this new app, which is able to at least map the skin for the risk of melanoma.
Absolutely.
But the stress at this stage is this is not your doctor. This iPhone is never going to be your doctor. Is it never, or do you envisage a day when your phone, for example, would be able to tell?
Absolutely. It is simply a function of the amount of information you can feed the machine to teach it. If it sees every possible mole and every possible skin lesion that there is, it will then be able to identify which ones are precancerous, which ones are cancerous, and which ones are benign. It's simply really a matter of numbers. But today, the value is really in a sort of data reduction. Let the computer take a look at everything, eliminate what it's 100% confident about, and then leave the human with just a few to look at. And right there, there's value. It's a more efficient approach. It's a kind of data reduction step. But in the end, yes, machines will become quite powerful at diagnosing.
Imagine this, though, a world in which not necessarily diagnosis, but certainly early detection is taking place the whole time. The sensors are there, it's just the apps that are needed.
We're only measured when we're sick. The idea now is to measure us when we're healthy. And if you measure people through sensors, through remote technology, using personal devices like a smartwatch or a smartphone, we can build into those devices artificial intelligence that is literally monitoring the person while they're healthy. We can teach AI to find early signals of diabetes, congestive heart failure, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and actually alert the clinician much sooner. And intervening sooner will cost less, be of benefit to the patient, and produce much more greater long-term value than simply curing. Prevention is indeed still the best cure.
The world's currencies are more connected than ever before. The mechanisms that drive the economy are universal. Money moves markets. We explain these trends and show you how the cash in your pocket can have a wide-reaching effect. Because money makes the world go round. Global business.
Mars enthusiasts believe it's only a matter of time before humans land on the red planet. To prepare, analogue astronauts are simulating missions on Earth. To earn their place, trainees must not only be the brightest and the best, they have to go through rigorous testing of their physical and mental abilities and their psychological strength. 50 people are brought in to run the tests, which include being set a complex task where the pressure is heightened by adding a time limit and increasing the number of people watching. Loaded up with around 50 kilos of weight, which represents the suit, they must go up and down stairs until they're physically exhausted before attempting complex tasks. And their patience and frustration buttons are pushed by counting out brown and white rice with chopsticks for no apparent reason.
We thought that everything was a test. You know, they did psychological interviews, regular interviews, physical tests, and you never knew exactly what they were testing for. You just kind of tried to be positive and do the best you can.
How do you react when you're in isolation?
I actually feel quite comfortable in isolation.
How do you cope under pressure?
How do I cope under pressure? I just think I try to do the best I can, and I realize that, you know, if for some reason I do make a mistake or there's some problem, I shouldn't be too hard on myself, because if there's that much pressure, then it's difficult. And so, you know, you can only give what you can, and you have to be okay with that. And then as long as you have that mentality, I think you tend to perform better while you're under pressure.
Do you have a tendency to panic?
Not that I know of.
Confined spaces don't trouble you?
I'm actually quite comfortable in confined spaces. Caves and such, I kind of find very exciting.
Anything scares you?
Probably some things scare me, but I haven't really found a pattern.
What you learn here, do you have any concerns about what you'd be facing, and can you achieve what they want you to achieve?
Well, that's of course always the concern. You know that they definitely pack the schedule full. There's not much time, there's lots to do, and the stakes are high, or the expectations are quite high.
Just before we put the goldfish bowl on your head, Robert, I just wanted to ask, is there a feeling of sort of a lack of control? Because you're not really in touch with your own body, are you?
Well, it's definitely a lot more difficult to move, and I'm wearing 3 layers of gloves, right? So anything I try to do is just quite very difficult. But within my range of motion, it's actually not so bad.
Yeah. And do you get slightly claustrophobic when the helmet goes on?
Well, I don't. I can imagine that some people would, but that was a certain part of the selection, that they don't take people who get claustrophobic easily.
While the 6 chosen analogue astronauts carry out experiments and test hardware and processes in Israel, in Innsbruck, a support team of 15 to 20 people at a time will work shifts, simulating their roles during a Mars mission. The team takes good care of the analogue astronauts' well-being. They have thought of everything.
So we have the mission architecture set up in a similar way like we'd have for Mars. So we have the field crew in the Negev desert, but we also have a mission support center in Austria with all the flight controllers, engineers, flight planners, and so on. And they're communicating with a time delay of up to 20 minutes. Actually, if it's the furthest away of what Mars can be, typically it's about 10 minutes or so, which means you have to field forward a lot of the decision-making autonomy from the Austrian Space Force Mission Support Center to the field as well. So the time delay, the limited bandwidth, the lack of reliability of communication satellites, for instance, these are all things we're recreating, because it would be cheating if we just do it in our front yard in a big sandbox, basically. But if you allow for all those unknowns to take place, for all the weather uncertainties, there's also weather on Mars. It might not be raining on Mars, but there might be dust storms, for instance. And these are the unknown factors which test us to the point where we know we are reliable enough to go to Mars.
The Austrian Space Forum is funded by national and international research funding agencies and sponsorship. Next year, it's hoped a new, more streamlined spacesuit will also be ready to launch on the Israel mission.
We're working on our second generation of spacesuits. It's called Serenity, and it's a follow-up system to the Auda, which we've been working right now. It's a totally new generation, new game. It's like comparing a Ford T model against an electrical car nowadays or so. So what we're seeing here is a suit which is based upon 10 years of development of a predecessor model, which has advanced electronics, new power systems, new ventilation systems. It is what we call a rear entry suit, which means you don't need an airlock anymore. You basically attach the suit to the wall of a spacecraft, you step in from behind with an open life support backpack basically, you close the backpack, you decouple and you're outside basically. That means you are mitigating the dust problematics, that you're not bringing in any dirt when you return from an extravehicular activity. Has many advantages, also disadvantages, but that's what we're hoping for.
It's yet to be decided who will wear the spacesuit simulator Serenity, but the new analogue astronaut class of 2019 are waiting for the call after attending their graduation at the European Mars Conference in London. And many are happy to remain on Earth, doing the groundwork for the first astronauts to land on Mars.
If you'd say, well, could you go tomorrow if it's a possibility? Well, it sounds really exciting. I'd have to think about it though, when the actual realistic details of it come up and see what the mission actually looks like. And but it would be difficult to just say no off the bat.
Mars is not the final destination, it's the direction. It's turning humanity into a spacefaring species. If we do what we can do in our time, which is establish that first human foothold on Mars, then, 500 years from now, there will be numerous new branches of human civilization on Mars, on hundreds of asteroids, and on hundreds of worlds circling other stars.
One of those groups is the Chinese space program, which recently unveiled its new Mars Explorer. It's on target to launch in 2020 and land in 2021.
The crew for Mars walks this planet already, and for them we are their shipbuilders in a way. So I don't know where this person would come from, if it's from Beijing or from New York or from Vienna, or who knows. I know I'd love to be with them, but although I'm only one of the shipbuilders enabling this voyage, I'm glad that they will make this journey, and they will make it. And it's my personal aim that when I'm retired one day, I'm sitting in my chair next to the chimney fire, and I have the 3D near real-time transmission of the first human landing. I can tell my grandchildren, I designed the little screw over there, and I was part of this adventure. I was one of the enablers, and that's a privilege I'm experiencing and living through every day of my work.
But we'll leave the final word to Carl Sagan, legendary astronomer and science communicator. Several months before his death in 1996, he composed a message to the future explorers of Mars.
I don't know why you're on Mars. Maybe you're there because we recognize that if there are human communities in many worlds, the chances of us being rendered extinct by some catastrophe on one world is much less. Or maybe we're on Mars because of the magnificent science that can be done there. The gates of the wonder world are opening in our time. Or maybe we're on Mars because we come, after all, from hunter-gatherers, and for 99.9% of our tenure on Earth, we've been wanderers, and the next place to wander to is Mars. But whatever the reason you're on Mars is, I'm glad you're there, and I wish I was with you.
So dark matter can travel through anything, but to increase the chances of finding it, the answer lies deep underground in something created from outer space.
Travelling down 2 kilometres underground, the concept right now is a little bit unsettling.
Just seems to be getting darker and darker.